Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Utah Stories program. Today on the program, we have with us in studio Dina Blaze. She is the director of the Office of Regional Development for Salt Lake County. She's going to be answering questions as to what businesses can do to survive these closures and when possibly local essential small businesses are going to be opening. So on the last show, we contended the idea that state liquor stores were deemed by the government as essential, whereas local restaurants and bars were deemed non-essential. Obviously, I'm an advocate for small businesses. I want to see small businesses operating. We cannot print and distribute our monthly magazine unless they are open. So I want to see them open as soon as possible. I'm not saying that what the government is doing is wrong. But of course, I would love to see more restaurants, bars, places we go to all the time open up in the same way, say, Costco is open, where I have 4 points where I think that they could possibly do this. In Costco, I go there once a week. I can see they allow maybe 300 customers in the store at one time. They maintain very strict social distancing standards. They are hyper vigilant about their sanitation. All employees are wearing masks and social distancing measures are enforced. I would add on to that they could take the temperatures of employees before they begin their shifts. There's more COVID testing coming out. If anybody has a cough or anything before they're allowed to a workplace, they could be tested with some of these testings that only require a few minutes. I would just love to see this economy reopen because the new COVID numbers just came out from the Department of Health for the state of Utah. And what we've got are today we have, let me find the latest numbers. There are 19 deaths in Utah. This has been over the past few days. It's just been 18. It seems like the death toll is not increasing in frequency, at least. There are 2,412 confirmed cases in the state. That's up 49 from Monday. Hospitalizations now stand at 213. 46,000 residents have now been tested for coronavirus. That's significant. And the General Jefferson Burton, who's in charge of the Department of Health, says there are 600 COVID designated hospital beds as of last week. We need another million or so ICU masks. That's the only thing we're short on right now. So what do these numbers mean? And I want Dean or anybody else who's watching to correct me if I'm wrong, because I just simply try to interpret what these numbers mean. Doing the math, 5% of the people who believe they have coronavirus and are tested actually have it, only 5%. Less than 1% of the people who have had COVID-19 in the state of Utah, this is 0.78%, have died. All of them have had pre-existing conditions or have been elderly, and that obviously it's sad and it's terrible, but it's less than 1%. And so far, unemployment claims in the state of Utah are at 19,600. So for every single COVID-19 case, 2,400 of them, we've had 9 times more unemployment claims. So I'm looking at this from an economic standpoint, and I'm looking at it from what leading economists are saying, which is this could take us years for our economy to recover from this. And so obviously I would like to see small businesses reopen soon. So with that said, welcome to the program, Dina. I appreciate having you on.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for wearing the mask. I appreciate that too. So you work under Salt Lake County Mayor Jenny Wilson, and she announced last week that we would be probably extending these closures through at least to the end of April, but more likely till Memorial Day. Is that still the stance we're
No. So the order that was issued on the 10th of April extends these current conditions of essential, restricted, and prohibited operations until the 1st of May.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not looking at Memorial Day now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it likely we'll see businesses, like, I guess it's hard to say right now, but is it likely she's not going to extend it past the beginning of May?
I can't answer that because it's entirely within the realm of the public health situation. So I think it might be important to mention that there are a couple things that are really important for us to clarify. If you're not familiar with the current order, it's important to understand that there are 3 categories for businesses. There's essential businesses, then there are the prohibited ones, and those are primarily personal service where it's impossible to conduct the business or the operation without close personal contact, and that's really where the problem is. Mm-hmm. So the masks are not super comfortable.
Yeah.
The restricted ones are businesses that don't fall into either the closed or the essential. So, and you give a perfect example about Costco. So Costco is considered sort of a grocery store, and that one's going to stay open because it's considered essential. But what you're seeing them do is really important for those businesses that fall within the restricted area. Because if you're a business that has operations that are not listed in the closed or prohibited, you can be open. And I think there's a lot of businesses that don't realize that's the case. So they can be open as long as they are excluding employees with fever, cough, or any of the COVID-19 symptoms. Mm-hmm. And they're also required to practice social distancing, which we're all seeing in our grocery stores and Costco, where you stand on the little, stand here until the person in front of you moves. So washing down cash registers, not taking cash, using cards for payment. There's all kinds of things that businesses can do to follow that restricted sort of COVID-19 social distancing requirements. And the county health department actually has resources on its website for various businesses to help them understand how can they do this job and utilize the social distancing and stay in business.
So, but restaurants are in the closed category or restricted? How do they fit in?
So restaurants you cannot have the dine-in. There's more restrictions on those, again, because of the close context. So you can't dine in. Mm-hmm. You can do curbside and phone in orders. They don't want any in-person orders. You have to phone those in, and delivery can happen curbside. So that's pretty common.
Yeah.
And I think we've been seeing that for quite a while.
Yeah. So we had on the program last week a restaurant owner named Eddie Johansson. He owns Yoshi's, and it's 2 food trucks in 2 locations. And he told us his business is down 75%, and he could likely stick it out till the middle to end of May before he has to just drastically cut staff and hours. And he was a really quickly growing business. Besides curbside delivery, that's really all he can do still at this point, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It absolutely is. I would encourage him and other businesses like him, though, to see if they can get a Paycheck Protection Program loan, which can be a forgivable loan or a grant after a certain period of time. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that because I talked to him about it. It's something we might qualify to, Utah Stories.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a little scary because it may be a loan or it may be a grant. You don't know getting into it. And
you do know. I can tell you that you do know. There are very, very specific provisions in the CARES Act.
You tell me, because I'm kind of sketched out about it.
So there are a couple of things that your listeners need to understand. One is that the sheer volume of requests for this money have been enormous, and the banks and credit unions are overwhelmed. So if you don't get that normal call back the next day that you normally get from your banker, they're not trying to avoid you. They are absolutely overwhelmed. Let me put it into a context for you. So last year, in the entire nation, there were $30.2 billion in SBA loans that were loaned out. Okay. The federal government has basically said, we are giving you $349 billion that we want you to loan out between February 15th and the 30th of June.
That's crazy.
So to give you an idea, last year in the state of Utah, there were $1.9 billion in SBA loans. They have already written applications for $2.6 billion. And the money hasn't all been spent yet. So just I can't stress enough how hard that is in terms of people feeling like they're not being heard and they're not being helped. It's not the case. It's just a matter of trying to get the sheer volume of applications and requests is enormous. So let me talk about this because this is really important. Because if you do use this money for certain what are called qualified expenditures, it becomes a forgivable loan or basically a grant. Okay, so let me go through those really quick. So anything that is payroll related, interest on mortgages, rent, utilities, or interest on any other debt that that business might have that they incurred before the 15th of February. Okay? So you go into your bank, you can get 2 times your payroll, your average monthly payroll, 2 times that amount, up to $10 million. So, and as long as you use the money for those expenditures that I just mentioned, then you go back to your bank, you show them their receipts. I can't stress enough how the documentation is so important. The receipts that those qualified expenditures, you have used the money for those things. Then the bank has 60 days from the day that you bring all those documents in to tell you whether or not it is a grant.
So the bank determines, not the federal government?
No, the federal government does, because that what I just listed to you is exactly the words from the CARE Act. In fact, it's on page 20 of the CARES Act. If you have listeners that want to look at it, it's about an 880-page document. But on page 20, it lists what the qualified expenditures are.
The federal government sets the guidelines, but does the bank interpret those guidelines, the bank workers, or do they send that back to the Fed to decide?
No, if you can show that that's how the money was spent,
that you've
if you
met
can
those
show
guidelines to
you've
your
met
banker.
the guidelines,
Okay.
then it becomes a grant.
So that banker you worked with, who you have the personal relationship with, that is the person who you need to give those receipts to. That's the person who will determine if you've met the qualifications.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is definitely better.
It makes sense to have that conversation with the lender going into the deal, letting them know. Because let's say you have some kind of expenditure, some equipment breaks, and you need that equipment to continue your curbside service, right? So you use some of that Paycheck protection program money to replace that equipment. That's not going to qualify. So what's going to happen is that amount of money is going to be subject to basically the terms of a loan, not more than a 10-year term and not more than 4% interest rate. So they do have a provision in the event that something happens and you spend it on something else, not those qualified expenditures that I just listed, it then becomes a loan.
So this is a tough question, and I understand if you can't answer it. We sort of rent space that's in the paper. I mean, we have to print this paper every single month. This is our biggest expenditure every month. Would a monthly printing bill by a publisher, do you think it would be covered under that?
It won't.
It wouldn't be covered?
No, it won't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think it would be. But, so rents, utility payments?
Yeah, so let me go through it. Let's go payroll. And when I say payroll, I mean fully loaded payroll. It can be the benefits you pay, the health and medical benefits.
But it doesn't include contractors, right?
It doesn't include contractors because the expectation is that if you're a 1099 wage earner, if you're a contractor, you are eligible to go and apply for this on your own. So that doesn't count in terms of the employee count.
Does it include owner's draw, owners paying
Yes,
themselves?
It does.
It does include
Yes, it
owner's
does.
draw.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything that you can argue on your taxes as part of your payroll expense. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the CARES Act also offers deferment of payroll taxes for 2020 as well.
Yeah.
Not a forgiveness,
nice.
But a deferral. So that helps too.
Yeah, tax days today.
Yeah.
We would all be
Well, actually, it
about
got
that.
extended to the 15th of July.
It would normally be today. I mean,
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. So that's the reality of it. And I can share your concerns. We have gotten a lot of questions about it at the county. The county instituted a business relief hotline on about the 30th of March. And now I'm going to give you that number. It's 385-468-4011. And the sole purpose of that hotline is to help businesses navigate these very confusing systems. What qualifies, what doesn't, what's available, what isn't. Because this is one of only 4 products that SBA has put out for COVID relief. So it's like you're busy worrying about your business. You don't have time to navigate 800 pages of federal legislation. So we wanted to create a place where businesses could call and get the information from a person and not some kind of a click bot.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Let's be sure to get that number on the screen, Tyler, too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get a message from our sponsors, but after that, we're going to talk to two distillery owners. They have two completely different stories. One of them's doing okay thanks to the liquor stores being open. One of them's not doing okay because of the restriction of her business being closed because she relies more on tours. And we're going to just present their stories and then get your answers to what they have to say.
Sure.
All right. The Utah Stories Show is brought to you in part by Canyon Meadows Grass-Fed Beef, located in eastern Utah. In beautiful Altamont pastures are some extremely happy cows who I've personally met. These cows are so happy because their entire lives they are fed on green pastures, where ranchers are practicing regenerative agriculture. And if you don't know the difference between factory farm beef and pasture-raised beef, you really have to try the difference. Go give Canyon Meadows a try and order your own package of steaks, ribs, ground beef, or roasts. I've personally used Canyon Meadows at our backyard barbecues for years. It is seriously the most tender and delicious meat I've ever tasted. Check out our Instagram and see the steaks we just cooked last weekend. I'm constantly blown away by how awesome they are. Their customer service is awesome, and it's all natural. It's delicious. It's a wonderful product. Visit them at cmrbeef.com. That is CMR Beef for Canyon Meadows Ranch Beef.com today. The show is also brought to you by the Carpet Barn. So in South Salt Lake is a 25,000 square foot warehouse. It's kind of out of the way. You got to look for it, but their carpet and their prices are absolutely amazing. I recently recarpeted my whole basement, and I have this really high thread count, plush, beautiful carpet that I got for way cheaper than the carpet I bought 10 years ago at a big box store. It is seriously amazing carpet for the price, and not a lot of people know about them because they have a really great customer base as it is, but they thought they'd try advertising on this podcast. So go tell them you found them here at the Utah Stories Show, and tell them you want awesome carpet, and they'll hook you up. It's in South Salt Lake. It's the Carpet Barn. Okay, so I'm going to give a call to Chris Cross. He's the co-owner of New World Distillery, and they've been in business, Ashley and Chris, I think about 4 years, and they're up in Eden, Utah, and he's going to give me his story and how they're doing amid COVID closures. So tell us a little bit about your business, how you guys got started, how you came up with the idea, and how long you've been in business.
We've been in business for over 3 years now, actually coming up on 3.5 years. We opened December 10th of 2016. As a hobbyist distiller, it was kind of always in our long-range plan to potentially get into the distillery business. We had initially thought it would be right around the time of retirement potentially. But in 2013 is when we decided that we were going to do this sooner rather than later. We wanted to do it here where we live in Eden, and we just thought if we waited any longer, we could potentially miss out on being the distillery in Eden, and then we'd have to move because we wouldn't be able to live with ourselves if there was another distillery here in Eden. So we moved out in 2013. It took us about 3 years to get open, and now we're coming up on our 3.5 year anniversary.
Yeah, and so you guys obviously invested your all your savings, your lives into your business. I just read the article I think Ashley shared. You were featured in Forbes magazine, or was it Wall Street Journal?
Yeah, Forbes magazine. That was a great article. We really appreciate them coming out and doing the tour and doing the tasting and giving us some really good press.
Yeah, and you guys make exceptional products. I mean, we just absolutely love your agave spirits, especially, and your cherry liqueur. And so, how is these COVID closures affected your business?
Negatively, in the short run. I don't think we'll really know the full impact until we're a few months down the road. And that's primarily due to the bars and restaurants being closed. Obviously, a lot of our product is sold through bars and restaurants, in the form of cocktails. And with every single bar and restaurant not able to do that right now, we know that's going to have a negative impact on us. The corollary to that is, liquor sales are up during this shutdown. People are hoarding everything to include liquors. So they go into the state liquor stores, you have the long lines and the empty shelves and the reduced hours. But we don't really know until we have a couple months of data whether we're making up ground there for what we've lost in the bars and restaurants, or we're losing ground there as well. My fear is that when people go to the state liquor store right now, they're buying stuff on the bottom shelf. They're not buying the stuff on the top shelf where we're located. We don't have any, full evidence of that yet. That's kind of my fear. So like I said, it's going to take us a couple months to try to figure out what the end situation is.
So you're not getting any numbers yet from the state liquor stores, how your sales are going?
Yeah, we have some historical data that I'd have to compare to. I do watch it every day. But like I said, it's going to take a while for us to figure out if we're actually, up or down on any given month compared to where we were last year. So, we're only 1 month into this wait. I know it's going to be longer, but it's going to take me some time to figure out what we've lost in the bars and restaurants, essentially.
Yeah. And is that where you would account for by far the majority of your sales then, is bars and restaurants?
No, but it is a large segment of our business. We're different than the other distilleries in the state, with maybe the exception of, High West, is we actually do a lot of sales out of our store here in Eden. Saturdays are our bread and butter. Tourist season is our bread and butter. Tours and tastings is our bread and butter. And, we don't have tours and tastings. We suspended all tours and tastings until further notice all the way back on March 12th. So, we're way down here at our location just based on the fact that we don't have our bread and butter, the tours and tastings.
Yeah. Have you applied for the PPP loans and the EIDL loan?
Yeah, we have done the EIDL loan. Got an email from them yesterday, actually. Looks like it's making some progress. And the big thing for us is we're in the fortunate situation to be able to take advantage of one of the other programs you didn't mention, and that's the debt relief program, because we have an existing SBA loan. That's a really incredible program, and we're thankful because essentially the SBA, for the people that have those existing loans, they pay the principal on that loan for the next 6 months. So that's a pretty good deal.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's on the SBA.gov website. You can see coronavirus impacts, and all 4 programs are explained pretty well there on their website.
Well, that's,
but the other major impact is we're down from 7 employees to 1, me, at this point.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not a good thing. We want to be able to take care of our people, but we don't know where this thing is going, and we're doing that for a couple of reasons. One is to try to get it as financially skinny as possible, and the other one is exposure. We didn't want to have everybody working in the package agency and being exposed. So I made the call, right at the beginning, that I would be the only one actually interacting with the public as an essential business, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's smart. We actually have Dina Blaze in with us. She's the regional director for Salt Lake County, and she's been listening to this phone call, and I just want to ask her: is there anything else you would recommend Chris does?
I do, actually. So, Chris, I don't know if you have taken advantage of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which it sounds like you have. You're a lucky one in that you've already been involved with the SBA system and are taking advantage of that debt relief. So the EIDL, one of the things that you might want to call your lender, not the SBA, because the PPP program is through SBA lenders, is to see if you can combine those two, which you can as long as you do not use the EIDL for the same reason that the PPP is intended for. So, because if you wanted to bring those 7 employees back to at least just pay them and maintain the workforce, the purpose of the Paycheck Protection Program was to keep workers paid and employed. So we understand that you can combine those 2 financial products, and as long as you don't use the EIDL for payroll, rent, utilities, and interest on mortgage, that money, if it's used for those qualified expenditures after the 8 weeks from the day in which it was approved, it becomes a grant. So what we're finding is that some businesses are going directly to their SBA office and getting the EIDL, but they're not aware that they could have used the PPP to pay for your payroll and keep your employees on. And then that becomes a grant after 8 weeks. So
That's good info. I have been in contact with our lender about those options, and they've been really, really great, really responsive, really on top of the info, because the info is obviously pretty fluid there. Not Thursday, Friday before they stood those up, but they've been really responsive and great.
So I would really strongly encourage you to get in touch with them, because you can combine the 2. And if you can get a grant for your payroll and you can keep your folks employed, that's going to be so much better. The EIDL tends to be a loan that we use for revenue replacement. So if you've had a drop in revenue, that's usually what you go to. But as long as you're not spending your EIDL money on payroll and those things that are qualified, I would really encourage you to go talk to your lender about getting the PPP as well.
Okay. Sounds great.
Cool. Was there anything else, Chris, that you wanted to say about your business and what's going on up there?
No, I just say shop local. I know a lot of people are supporting the restaurants by, doing takeout, and, when you're at the liquor store, you can do the same thing by buying local.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you haven't tried New World's cherry liqueur or their agave spirit or their gin, I mean, all 3 products are amazing. You guys just do a really great job.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the compliment.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Chris.
hang in there. Stay safe. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise. You guys hang in there. Stay safe as well. Thanks for the call.
Bye. Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to touch on, I presented in the last episode how, the state has basically decided what are essential businesses, what aren't. And obviously the grocery stores are essential, Costco's essential, and the state liquor stores are essential. In no way, shape, or form was I implying that we should not have state liquor stores open. Some of your comments seem to think that that's what I was implying, and that's not at all what I meant. What I mean is that we should extend the essential classification to bars and restaurants, and we should do what we can to support restaurants and especially distilleries and product makers by keeping it all local, especially during these tough times. We can basically decide that we will maintain our social fabric and our local business community after this is over, because my biggest fear, and you see if you would agree with me on this, Dana, is that all the corporations that have drive-through windows, they're going to be fine. All of them that do delivery, they're going to be okay. It's the really small ma and pa operations like Chris and Ashley and the little burger stops that are all over Utah, that they're going to be hit the hardest because they don't have the accounting knowledge, the banking relationships, the finance background to be put in a good position in line to get these loans. Do you think that that's a valid fear of mine?
No, I do think it's a valid fear, and it's a fear that we share at Salt Lake County. What we find, and we know because we're hearing it in the voices of the business owners that are calling our hotline, is that if you were a business that was underserved prior to COVID-19, you are even more marginalized now because of the difficulty. And there's like I said, the volume, there's so many people calling their bankers. They've had a long-term relationship with those lenders. And so they're they're the ones being talked to first. So I agree with you, and it is a huge concern at Salt Lake County. So we are trying to ramp up our staffing and our structure to begin to provide better support for those businesses, because if we lose them, we really do lose kind of a thread in this fabric that's so critical for us to have. So I agree with you completely, and it's something we're really concerned about at the county.
Yeah, well, that's good. I feel for them because it's not like when you're really ultra small, when it's basically your family business, that you have the time to go out and think about, okay, I'm going to read these 10 websites on how to do the loan. I'm going to go to these 10 banks. It's more like you need to pay the bills next week. Maybe I just need to go get a delivery driver job somewhere or something to just
absolutely.
fill the gap.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not what we want, because like you said, they tend to have the best, they're like the spice in the soup. They're sort of the best part of a community. It's the places we all hang out. We know the owners, we know their sons or daughters or the servers. I mean, yeah, I think we all understand how critical that is to maintaining the quality of life in Salt Lake County.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. So now I'm going to call up James Fowler. He agreed to be on the program. And he's the owner of Sugar House Distillery. And Sugar House Distillery has been around for a while, and they make awesome products as well.
Oh, well, this James.
Hey, James, it's Rich from Utah Stories. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for coming on the program.
Yeah, no, happy to.
We have Dina, right? Sorry, I called you. We have Dina Blaze in studio. She's the regional director for Salt Lake County, and she's going to answer questions about loans and kind of best how to navigate loans. And but before we get to her, I just wanted to hear a little bit about your business. Obviously, I know the background, but just for our listeners and viewers, how did you get started in Sugar House Distillery, and what made you want to start your own business in the first place?
Well, I kind of think that it just kind of runs in the blood. You know, my mom and dad both were small business owners, and, you know, growing up in life, my mom was always like, go get a real job. You know, go work for the state, work for the government, benefits. You know, very big on that. He owned a real estate company. My dad owned a couple of other companies, but it was just always like that entrepreneurial, you know, wanting to sell things here. A little bit, I think you've got into real estate, but that was always, you know, something I enjoyed doing on the side was, you know, buying houses, fixing them up, selling them, stuff like that. But I went to work for a big corporation and worked there for quite a few years and just really kind of like, this is brutal. You know, I traveled 80% of the time but it was big corporate America. We'd stay, you know, at Ritz-Carlton, nice places and eat nice meals, but it was life. I mean, it was really kind of different. And so I would just sit and be like, man, I got to do my own thing. And I started home brewing on a pretty serious level back in the early 90s and won some awards. And that brewery was kind of always in the back of my head. Like, I really want to open a brewery. And, you know, when I got older, started drinking whiskey and started falling in love with bourbon. And, you know, all of a sudden you realize that, like, wait, I understand fermentation. If you know how to brew beer, then you just need to take that beer and distill that alcohol out of there. And, you know, 7 years ago, I finally pulled the plug and said, we're going to go ahead and open a distillery. And that's, you know, how I got into it. And holy cow, like, thinking that, you know, owning your own business would be easier than working for corporate America was kind of pretty, you know, eye-opening as far as it's a lot of hard work. You know, it's definitely 6-7 days a week most weeks. But at the same time, I remember being here on Thanksgiving thinking I'd rather be here than anywhere else. You know, I love doing what I do. And so, you know, that's a huge benefit to it every single day.
Yeah, you absolutely have to love it because at least in the beginning, the hourly pay, if you were to calculate it, it's usually not so good.
Yeah, we're definitely below minimum wage. Exactly. Yeah.
But it seems like you started turning a corner maybe 2-3 years ago, and I was seeing your product everywhere. You did some rebranding. You were started just seeming to kill it at our festivals. Did you really see a big growth in your business over the last few years?
I mean, but I think that's exactly it. I think the rebranding helped. But the other thing, it's really hard to sell young whiskey. And after being open for 3, 4, 5 years, you start getting good aged 2, 3-year-old whiskey. And so there's two ways to go about it. You can source whiskey or vodka or whatever you want on the open market and throw it in the bottle and say it's yours, or you can kind of take the tough route and go up through the ranks just selling your own products. And that's a decision that I made to do, is to not source on the open market. And so hindsight was a little tough, because you have people that tried it, batch 1 or batch 2 of the bourbon or the malt, and they were like, but and then it's fun to hear them now, like, holy cow, that is really good, but so that's kind of the hard thing with a distillery, is going that route. But yeah, being grain to glass to me is probably, I mean, as far as what I see of the company, it's one of the most important things, to kind of just stay true to the roots of that.
Yeah, and respect for doing that, because I know a lot of distilleries in town who are successful who don't do that, and it's because it is a whole lot more work and a lot more man hours and equipment to do it. So it's like, if if consumers are educated, they should know which ones are doing it, which ones aren't. And I encourage everybody to know. But I wanted to ask you, so are you taking advantage of some of the federal loan programs, and how's your business doing among the COVID closure?
We have been very fortunate. Holy cow, let me tell you. I mean, we just had like 3 things hit at one time, and it just really put a huge workload onto us in a very positive way. I had somebody call me from an office saying basically Gary was going to shut down the liquor stores, and that we needed to do everything to go to bat to try to keep them open. And that next morning we had the earthquake, and at that point, the state closed down the liquor stores. And I think we had 2 days, maybe 3 days of them being shut down. And so when you're the only game in town, it creates quite a few people at your door. We had a big release of our Boilermaker series, which is kind of always a hard whiskey to get from us. And that was right about the same time. And then doing hand sanitizer, just kind of thinking outside the box of, a big part of it is we want to help people, we want to do it, and we have the capability to make it here. And between doing those 3 things, it put everything on overdrive here. And, normally 9 times out of 10, you can come here and there may be one person here, but there was, a time in the last 3 weeks that we've had a line down the street that, just people trying to get in. And so, to me, it's just, I'm so thankful that we're on that side of it, and, that in high demand, and not every local distillery has been that way. Some of them have chose to close, and for a very good reason. I mean, you can't say that's bad to anybody, because, going home and kind of staying away from everybody is probably a good thing to do. And
if I understand you correctly, you say your biggest days were when the liquor stores were closed after the earthquake. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, because you had every store in Salt Lake shut down. I know for at least 2 days, but if not 3.
Huh. So people just came in and took and you had sold out your product. Is that what happened?
Yeah, and so everybody came in, and for brand awareness, that was awesome because it's so hard to advertise here in Utah with our rules and the laws and regulations, and it gave us an option. I mean, we posted something, and we just put like $50 on a paid post or something like that we were open, and it just took off. Like it was just like, hey, we can get vodka at Sugar House Distillery, and so yeah, it really kind of got things going. But I mean, the sanitizer has been just as big of a bump too.
Oh, the sanitizer just seems like brilliant because, man, we did a story on Ogden's Own doing sanitizer. Ted Scheffler wrote that story, and that story got like 3,000 views in 4 days, which is huge on our website. And we thought there must be something there to do an hand sanitizer right now. I think if there were two factories I could open up right now, it'd be a toilet paper factory and a hand sanitizer factory.
Yeah, I mean, and we're a little bit worried of, how long is it going to last? Don't overdo it. But we probably have been running just ethanol for sanitizer. So we're just like, what cheap base can we, turn into sugar? And we try to get as much raw sugar as we can get, corn. And then we had Squatters and Wasatch send us over, 220 kegs of bad beer that was, supposed to go to bars and restaurants that didn't go, that we're turning that into hand sanitizer.
Wow.
So, but bottles aren't easy. Spray tops are impossible to find. So it has just been a nightmare, but to hear the stories and to, it's just like overwhelming about the positive side of it, of helping people and trying to get it in, the right people's hands. That's one tough thing, is everybody wants to make a buck on it. And it's like, we're not here to make money on this. We want to get this in first responders. We want it at the hospitals. We want it, to the correct places. But when you have CEOs of hospitals call you and plead, it's you quickly realize how important it is that you just step up and say, let's do the right thing and let's make hand sanitizer,
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I saw on your Facebook you've got masks there too for sale.
Yeah, so I think you're going through the small business, the Goldman Sachs small business program right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Skylar, he owns Uinta Mattress, and he was in the cohort right behind me, and we've met at just some different things around the valley, and he didn't have an outlet. Like, he's like, I sell mattresses, James. I don't have a retail. Like, we just got a warehouse. And so he called me a few days ago, and he's like, what about letting you being our outlet to get these out? And they're donating a lot once again to first responders and different places, but he's like, let's, that can help us. And so so
he switched over his mattress factory to masks, and your distillery as an outlet to get his masks out. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, he's like, we're slow with the mattresses. So, I think he was telling me they got to make a mask a minute to just break even on the whole thing. So he's like, it's, we're perfecting it. We're working on it. But he's like, it's a way to keep, the employees paid and food on their table and, not sending them through the unemployment system, and so with it just being positive like that, it's just like, absolutely. And I'm kind of like scratching my head like, man, we don't want to be like a, we're a distillery. We sell booze. But at the same time, I think for the next 30 days or 60 days, if we can help and do a lot of this, it's like, why not? It's the same thing. I can keep food on my employees' tables and help them, with getting a paycheck. And I think it's the right thing to do.
Well, that's an awesome story, man. I really appreciate you calling in and talking to us, because I think that, just being a small business owner, the last thing you want to do is rely on the government. I just don't think it conforms with the independent-minded DNA of an entrepreneur, of a business owner. you just like you just hear, oh, the federal government, we're from the federal government and we're here to help. Those are like scary words. It's just I so it's really cool to see these pivots. You're working with somebody in your cohort from the Goldman Sachs program. Some of the people in my Goldman Sachs program, they're making extreme pivots, and some of them are working, some of them aren't. Obviously, we've made a huge pivot to online while we can't print our magazine, and it's awesome to see the traffic. Last week, we had an 80% increase in traffic over the last year at the same period last year at this time. And all these comments on stories. And I think if we get all together, kind of like the spirit of that program, and we exchange ideas and we learn from each other and bounce ideas around, I think that's how we're going to get through this. I think it's great. The SBA has all this money, but Dina just explained they cannot process this many loans. They're just not equipped to do it. And so have you applied for any of the loans? Are you going that route at all?
Yeah, I have. I'm just like my head's spinning, and I applied online, and then we said we had to reapply. I bank at a big national bank, and I applied to PPP through there. I got an email basically saying, hey, sorry, go apply somewhere else. We're not going to do it, so rushing out to get an account set up at another. I went to a credit union this time. I just got the phone call today that I was officially set up, but they did let me get my application in, when I was setting up the account at that credit union, which is good. But it's been really kind of crazy to see how it's all evolved too, because they first talked about, hey, it's going to be $10,000, and then as a grant this is on the disaster loan, and then all of a sudden the last few days you start reading and they're saying, well, if you got to at least have 10 paid employees. And I mean, to me, it's here nor there, but at the same time, when you have employees or you have companies that just have, 3 or 4 employees, and maybe owners take draws or different things like that, all of a sudden that could really hurt them, and that $10,000 was probably much needed, but it does go back to what you were saying. Like you can't rely on the government, we all need to work together. The beginning of this hand sanitizer thing was that way. I talked to my attorney. He's like, do not touch this hand sanitizer thing with a 20-foot pole. The FDA is going to come after you. The TTB is going to come after you. And then we'd get a little bit of positive stuff out of the FDA saying, well, you could use this, World Health formula and the TTB, but it took them like 2 weeks to really, come together. And then they still couldn't ever make it work. So they just said, what we're going to do? We're just not going to prosecute anybody during this crisis.
Right.
You guys can do it. We're requesting that you follow these guidelines, but we're going to turn our heads but more or less it was like everything is so complicated, that they can't do that. So.
But they let you do it in the end, huh? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and exactly. In the end, it all worked out, So.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming on, James. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Good, very nice talking with you. So.
Yeah, good talking to you. Hopefully we'll have a festival again sometime this year, and we'll see you again.
Yeah, exactly. So if not, it'll be some big virtual Zoom, everybody with a drink in their hand or something. Like, I don't know,
Yeah, line up the cars somehow, give people shots out their car window. Figure it out. Yeah. All right. Okay, see you, James. Thanks, man.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
All right. Yeah, kind of pretty encouraging, talking to him. I think he's definitely onto something, getting into the hand sanitizer world.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point. It's like these small businesses we find are the ones that are most resilient. If they can't take path A, they're going to take path B and do what they need to do to keep their business going. So, I mean, kudos to him. That's just an amazing, like you said, the stress of thinking, what am I going to do? My sales are plummeting. What am I going to do? To be able to pivot like that and find the silver lining in it is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And I think the key is you just have to take action. Like some mornings, it's kind of hard to get out of bed, especially if you got kids at home. As we've discovered, having kids at home all day long, it's tough. It's extremely tough. Kudos to parents. We're just right now in the process of adopting 3 kids, and we're learning this.
Wow.
But I have so much respect for everybody right now who are homeschooling their kids, taking care of their kids all day long, every day. But as a business owner, if you just continue to take action, do something, realize we're all kind of in a sandbox again. We're trying new things. We're seeing what's going to work, what sticks, what doesn't stick. And I think everybody watching, if you got a small business and you're struggling big time, try something new every day. And in this Goldman Sachs program that James was in about a year ago or 2, and I'm in it right now, the most encouraging thing is we're in there with 40 other small business owners. Nobody is just sitting on their hands waiting for the government check to show up. Everybody's trying to do something. And if you keep a positive attitude and you realize that, it's extremely difficult, and it's could be a couple of months before we start to feel like a semblance of normalcy, but it's not going to be the same as it was before. And if you can take advantage of the new economic conditions that are going to exist post-COVID, because this is another giant societal changing moment, like 9/11, like the housing bubble.
Yeah.
If you can realize those conditions and take advantage of those conditions, you're going to come out of this better off, I think.
Well, that's true, and it brings up a really good point. I mean, you yourself mentioned it with Utah Stories Magazine. You have had to pivot to an online. And so I would ask, are you going to go back to printing as much as you did before? I mean, I think it's going to cause you guys to sit down and think to yourselves, what is this a new model that I'm going to be following? I mean, I think it's important for people to think about that. And the county's been really concerned about making sure the smaller businesses are getting access to the financial resources they need. But when we can kind of come above the fray and the crazy, there's a huge opportunity for us to there's a silver lining to this. It's a huge opportunity for us to rethink, how are we providing public services to people? I mean, the county has had to figure out, how do we provide public service when our government building is shut down? So we're having to retool how we provide those public services.
You guys are all working from home too.
Yeah. So going into the future, I think it's opened our eyes to some possibilities about how we can have greater access, how we can maybe establish a better work-life balance for some of our employees, and still meet the critical and essential needs that we have as a government providing those public services. So I think we're all thinking about those things completely.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Dina, for coming on.
You know what? Can I take a 5? I want to talk to you about a really, really important thing.
Oh, yeah.
So people
What's
have
going to
been
make them reopen?
What is going to
criteria? This is super important.
This is really important.
Yeah,
so
save the best
I
for
think the
last.
most important thing I can say is we should not assume that we're just going to one day flip the lights back on. That's not going to happen. With the public health issue, we have to really be cognizant about balancing economic activity and regaining that sound economic activity with the public health aspects. Because the last thing we want to do is do too much and find ourselves in a crisis again. Because I don't think anybody can handle sort of this, we can go out and we're at crisis levels again. So there's really 4 points that we're going to be looking at that will help us make a decision about whether or not we're ready to begin to lift up the dimmer switch a little bit at a time. So that is a continued decline in the cases of COVID-19 and the hospitalizations, okay? The second one is that hospitals, for us it's those in Salt Lake County, are safely able to treat all patients without resorting to crisis standards of care. The third is that we're able to test all people that are experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. And then the fourth one is that we are able to conduct active monitoring to confirm cases and their contacts, so that contact tracing. So we need to be pushing on all 4 of those levers. They need to be progressing together. We know they won't be in tandem all the time, but when we can start seeing progress in those 4 areas, then we can begin to look at sort of opening the economic activity again in the state and the county.
So those are the 4 key measurements that they'll look at the end of this month or on May 1st to determine if restaurants can open to a degree.
Yeah, and we're looking at them every single day. And I'll tell you that we have also been talking about sort of the creativity about sort of how do you open? You know, once that happens, there's all kinds of ideas coming out. Like, do we ask for cities to relax their sidewalk cafe standards so that we can have more outdoor dining?
Yeah.
Do you limit the number of people? It's like you said, Costco has limited the number of people coming in. Is that a reasonable solution for restaurants? We don't know. But we're talking to the public health officials about what are those things that we can look at. But we can't begin to even think about that until we know these 4 things are occurring in a way that is going to keep the public safe in the future. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just especially when you're putting on big events, and Sugar House Distillery, he's come to all of our Made in Utah festivals, and he would do better and better and better. That's his main mechanism for marketing and branding. Without these big festivals, it's like, how do these product makers get out there? How do they do branding? Yeah. It's like we just have to rethink everything. That's
true, but I would totally welcome a bourbon-scented sanitizer. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, and we'll be thinking about how we're going to run a festival through car windows or something like that. I guess that probably wouldn't work, taking shots through your car window.
No, probably not. But I mean, the bottom line is we all want to gather again. We want to be together.
Yeah,
we are social creatures, and so we need it.
It's so nice to actually come to the office when I do come. It's just.
But like you, my neighborhood, I worry about my neighbors. I care about them enough that I'm not going to go visit them. I'm not going to congregate with them. I care about them too much to put them at risk and for them to put me at risk. So we have to be patient, and I know that's the hardest part. But we at least have 4 points that can be data-driven. We know it's data. It's not anecdotal. It's not how I feel or you feel or anybody else feels. We really can measure those changes.
It is all about the data. And I know the biggest problem, and what I see happening right now that is encouraging, is we actually don't know the denominator. We don't know how many people have already had it, gotten better, and are, have the antibodies.
Yeah.
And so I heard that David Neeleman wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal. He's the owner of JetBlue Airlines, where he's working with a group of people, doctors, who are going to do random sampling. They're going to come out with testing that different cities and states can take to find out how many people have actually had this thing. Then we actually know what the true death rate is, because we still don't even know that.
Right.
And
we're learning a lot. We're learning a lot from Singapore and from China and other places. And we're lucky enough in Utah to have a lot of multinational companies. Mm-hmm. So our intelligence office at the county is reaching out to those folks to let us know what they're seeing in those other countries so that we can learn from it. Yeah. We have to learn from it so we know what's best to do.
Yeah.
We don't want to make decisions that are going to risk people's health and safety. So.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a good job.
We're trying to.
All right. Well, thanks, Dina.
Great. Thanks, Rich. So glad to join you today.
Yeah. Happy to have you. Yeah. So thanks for watching the Utah Stories Show. If you would like to follow us, join us on Instagram. That's probably the number one social media platform we use. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And if you listen to us on iTunes, we would love it if you give us a 5-star review. That makes us a lot more prominent on their platform. And the last thing you can do, I'm going to give you more information about this in the coming weeks, is subscribe to our Utah Stories newsletter. That's the most critical, important thing you can do to support this program. We're going to have a push to get 10,000 subscribers to our weekly newsletter. And we are going to give away a online ebook, the very best of Utah Stories book, and that you can read it on your Kindle, your e-reader. We are working on putting that together right now. You will get that book for free if you subscribe to our Utah Stories newsletter. That's a limited time offer where the next 2 weeks we're going to be pushing to 10,000 subscribers. And while we're doing that, we will send you that book. Once it's done, it's going to be done in about a month. And it's all of the best Utah stories we've written over the past 10 years. And it's really an amazing collection. We've produced over 1,500 stories in 10 years, and they are the very best ones. So be sure to go sign up right now, utahstories.com. And special thanks to Tyler for coming in today, for helping produce the show, and Connie Lewis. And I will see you next time.